Okay, picture this. You're in a conversation. Maybe someone new, could be networking, maybe just grabbing a coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You're speaking English, it's going okay, you're following along, and then bam,
Yeah.
it happens. That
The
silence.
dreaded pause. Oh, I know it well.
Yeah. The conversation just stops. Dead. You've said your piece, they've said theirs, and there's just this quiet that feels, I don't know, really loud.
It really does. It's like the air gets sucked out of the room.
And you're scrambling, right? Your brain's going a mile a minute trying to find the next thing to say, the next topic, and it's just
Yeah.
empty.
Blank. Yeah.
Sound familiar? I bet it does for a lot of people listening.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly relatable.
Yeah.
That kind of conversational paralysis, especially like you said, when you're operating in a language that maybe isn't your first one, it feels like you've just slammed into a wall, and the pressure to keep it going, it just builds and builds.
You feel totally stuck. Like, how do I
Yeah.
get out of this? How do I make it not awkward?
Exactly. How do you recover gracefully?
Well, that exact feeling, that being caught flat-footed, that's precisely what we're diving into today.
Good.
How do you actually move past those awkward bits? How do you get the confidence and maybe, more importantly, the tools, the actual techniques to keep the chat flowing, naturally, engagingly?
Or practical stuff.
Yeah, the practical stuff. We've been digging into some really interesting source material, specifically this one audio recording that's all about mastering English conversations. It's got some great practical strategies.
Yeah, I looked at that too. It's quite good.
And so we're going to pull out the best bits, the really potent insights and techniques from that recording.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive, it's pretty clear, pretty focused. We want to take those simple, but actually really effective techniques from the source material and really unpack them for you, give you actionable things, stuff you can actually start using, like tomorrow.
Right, to avoid those conversational dead ends.
Exactly. And just feel more comfortable, more confident when you're speaking English. Doesn't matter why you're learning it, for work, for study.
Or just because you're curious.
Or just pure curiosity.
Yeah.
Exactly, connecting with people. So yeah, this is tailored for you listening right now.
Okay, let's jump in then. To fix a problem, you kind of need to know why it happens first, right?
Makes sense. Diagnosis before treatment.
So why do conversations actually, falter? Why do they die? The source material points to a couple of really key pitfalls, things people do, often without realizing, that just stop things cold.
It does. And one of the absolute biggest mistakes it highlights, it's about the kind of questions we tend to ask.
Okay.
The source calls them questions that lead to dead ends. Specifically, the ones that basically invite just a simple yes or no answer.
Ah, yeah, the classic yes-no question trap. It feels safe, doesn't it? Like an easy question to ask.
It does. It seems harmless.
Yeah.
But think about it. The source gives this crystal clear example. Imagine you ask someone, do you like music?
Okay, yeah, seems like a normal question.
Seems normal, but what's the easiest, most likely answer you're going to get?
Yes. Or maybe no.
Exactly. Probably yes. And then what?
Silence.
Silence, right. All the momentum just poof, gone.
Yeah, and now the pressure's back on me to think of the next question. Like, okay, they like music, now what?
Precisely. You've put the entire burden back on yourself to keep the conversation going. After that tiny little answer, it's a conversational dead end, just like the source says, because the way the question is built, it limits the answer. It only asks for one bit of information, yes or no, confirmation or denial.
It's like building a tiny little bridge that just stops halfway across the river. You get there, you stop, and you got to figure out how to get the rest of the way.
That's a great analogy. And the source contracts this so well with a much, much better way to ask. Instead of, do you like music? Ask, what kind of music do you like?
Ah, okay. What kind?
Now, just think for a second. Can you answer yes or no to what kind of music do you like?
No. No, you can't. You actually have to provide information. You got to name something, describe something.
Right. The answer, just by the nature of the question, has to be longer. It has to be more detailed. The source suggests, the person might say something like, oh, wow, I listen to a bit of everything, really. But I guess I really love rock music. My favorite band is probably Coldplay.
Okay. Already way more information.
Though, I've been getting into some indie bands lately, too.
See, look at all the stuff you just got from that one answer. Prompted by just changing do you to what kind. You've got rock music, you've got Coldplay, you've got favorite band, indie bands.
Loads of stuff. These are what we can call like conversational hooks.
Right.
Each one of those little details is something you can grab onto now.
Yeah, you can follow up.
Exactly. The source points this out. You could ask, oh, Coldplay, why do you like them so much? Or, cool, what indie bands have you been checking out?
Or even, have you seen Coldplay live? Or what was the first rock concert you ever went to? Like, it just opens up.
Exactly. So many possibilities. Suddenly, from just tweaking that first question slightly, you've unlocked this whole branching network of potential conversation paths.
That first question, what kind, wasn't a dead end at all. It was more like a gateway.
Perfect word. A gateway. And the source really hammers this home. Making that shift, moving away from simple yes-no questions.
Like, do you, are you, have you?
Right. Moving away from those and instead leaning into questions that use words like what, how, or why.
The ones that demand description or explanation.
Yes. That shift is fundamental. It's absolutely key if you want to keep the conversation flowing and actually learn something interesting about the other person.
It's like you're moving from just confirming little facts, likes music, yes, no, to actively asking for their thoughts, their experiences, their reason.
You're encouraging them to elaborate, to share more. And that difference, highlighted so clearly in the material, is just crucial for keeping the dialogue rich and alive.
Okay, so that's a big one. Asking those dead-end questions. Major trap. What's the other main pitfall the source talked about that kills conversations just as effectively?
Well, it's basically the flip side of the same coin.
Okay.
It's about giving really short answers yourself.
Ah, right. So even if they ask a good question.
Exactly. Even if the other person asks a brilliant open-ended question like, what kind of travel do you enjoy? If your answer is just super minimal, well, you're just as much to blame for the conversation grinding to a halt.
The source uses another great simple example for this, doesn't it? Someone asks you, do you like traveling? And your answer is just, yes.
Boom. Like hitting a wall again. Conversation over.
Yeah.
You might have backpacked across Asia. You might have climbed Kilimanjaro. You might have gotten wonderfully lost in the streets of Rome. But if all you offer is yes,
You've given them nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing to grab onto.
zero. No detail, no hook, nothing that makes them think, oh, interesting.
Right.
Nothing that inspires a follow-up question from their side. They're just left hanging thinking, okay, great.
It's like they opened a door for you, invited you into a room full of interesting stuff, and you just kind of nodded at the door and stayed outside.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
You haven't picked up the conversational ball, like you said before, and moved it forward. You've just stopped it, dead.
So frustrating for the other person, probably.
It can be,
Yeah.
but luckily, the source material provides a much, much better way to handle that exact scenario.
Okay, what's the better answer they suggest for, do you like traveling?
Right, instead of just yes, the better answer they propose is something like, yes, I love traveling. Actually, last year, I went to Thailand, and it was amazing. Have you ever been there?
Okay, let's unpack that one like the source does, because it's doing
Yeah.
a lot more work than just yes.
A lot more. So first you confirm, yes, I love traveling. Basic answer, checks the box.
Got it.
But then, straight away, you add crucial new stuff. Detail. Last year, I went to Thailand. Okay, that's specific. A time, a place,
Okay.
and it was amazing.
Right. That adds substance. Thailand is a concrete thing they can picture. Amazing. Gives your feeling about it, your little evaluation.
Exactly. It gives the other person something real to react to. Their mind might go, oh, Thailand. Wow, I've always wanted to go. Or amazing, what did you do there? Or maybe they've been too.
Yeah, you've just given them context. A little snapshot of an experience.
You have. And this is the really critical bit, the source emphasizes you tack on a follow-up question that points the conversation right back to them. Have you ever been there?
Ah, yes. Passing the conversational torch, like we said.
That's the masterstroke. You've shared a little bit, and now you're explicitly inviting them to share. It's your turn.
So they can answer your question about Thailand. Maybe they have been, maybe they haven't, but want to go.
Or maybe they haven't been to Thailand, but it reminds them of another trip they took, and they share that instead. No, I haven't been to Thailand, but I went to Vietnam last year, and that was incredible. See?
Yeah, it opens the door for them to contribute again.
It turns what could have been just your brief answer, a monologue, into a proper dialogue. A back and forth. You've done your bit, and now you've clearly opened the floor for their bit. That dynamic keeps the energy up.
So it's not just about answering the question they asked. It's using their question as a springboard to, add your own color and toss the ball back.
Perfectly put. Add color, toss
Yeah.
the ball back. And this leads directly to a really fundamental rule that the source material pulls out from this analysis.
Okay, what's the rule?
When you answer a question, Make a conscious effort, really think about it, to always add at least one extra piece of detail or ask a follow-up question back to the other person. Or maybe both.
Always add detail or a question.
Yes. It's not about rambling on and on. It's about providing just enough extra conversational fuel. Just one more sentence, often. It's a skill, something you could actively practice doing. Don't just stop at the bare minimum answer. Use the question as a stepping stone. Offer a bit more, or ask for a bit more from them.
That really reframes how you think about answering. You're not just like a witness answering questions in court. You're actively co-building the conversation with the other person.
Exactly. Co-building. I like that. And these two things together, asking questions that open doors, not close them, and giving answers that add value and invite more talk. The source presents these as, like, the foundational pillars.
Yeah.
Get these right, and you avoid most of those awkward silences.
Yeah, mastering those basics seems like it would make a huge difference straight away. Less chance of hitting that wall.
Definitely. A huge difference.
Okay, so we've nailed the main problems. Asking those closed questions, giving those minimal answers. Now let's shift. Let's talk solutions. What are the tools, the actual techniques the source gives us to actively build those conversational bridges? Make sure the flow is smoother, more confident.
Right. Moving from the what not to do to the what to do, the source material basically lays out a toolkit of specific techniques you can learn and use. And the first two are really just the positive side of what we just discussed of the pitfalls. Now, framed as proactive strategies.
Okay, so technique number 1 is asking better questions. Basically doubling down on using what, how, and why.
Exactly. The source presents this not just as a vague idea, but as a deliberate method. Think about what those question words actually do. A what question inherently asks someone to describe something or identify information. What do you think of the presentation? What are your plans for the holiday?
Right. You can't just say yes or no.
A how question asks them to explain a process or a method. How did you get into photography? How does this new software work? Again, needs more than yes, no.
Okay.
And a why question asks for a reason, a justification, a motivation. Why did you choose that major? Why is that important to you?
Again, needs explanation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
None of these typically allow for a simple one-word answer. So by consciously choosing to frame your questions using these words, you're kind of forcing a more detailed response right from the get-go.
You're setting the stage for a richer answer before they even open their mouth.
You really are. You're proactively asking for information or explanation or description, which automatically gives you more material to work with for the next step of the conversation. Think about the difference. Did you enjoy the conference? Yes, no, possible, easy out. Versus, what was the most interesting thing you learned at the conference?
Totally different. The second one requires thought, specifics.
Right. Or, can you play the guitar? Yes, no. Versus, how did you learn to play the guitar? Or what kind of songs do you like to play on the guitar?
Much more engaging. Okay, so that's asking better questions. Technique 2 must be giving fuller answers, reinforcing that rule, add detail or a question back.
Yes. And the material digs a bit deeper into why this is so effective, beyond just, providing more words.
Okay.
When you add that extra detail, you're signaling something important.
Yeah.
Showing you're willing to contribute, that you have more to offer than just the bare minimum. It shows you're engaged, you're interested in the exchange.
Makes sense. It feels more generous conversationally.
It does. And when you add that question back, you're explicitly showing interest in them. You're actively inviting their participation. It makes it feel collaborative.
So it changes the whole vibe, really. From feeling like maybe you're being quizzed.
Right, like an interrogation.
To feeling like you're actually having a shared conversation. Like, here's a little about me, now tell me about you.
Precisely. You're not just responding to their prompt. You are actively initiating the next turn in the conversation and the details you add. They act like little signposts or potential new branches, as the source suggests. Even if your direct follow-up question doesn't quite land, they might pick up on one of the details you shared.
Ah, right. Like in the Thailand example.
Yeah.
Yes, I love traveling. Last year I went to Thailand and it was amazing. Have you ever been there? Maybe they ignore the have you ever been there part.
Exactly. Maybe they jump on Thailand because they just got back from there too, or their sister lives there, or they love Thai food. Or maybe they pick up on amazing and ask, oh yeah, what made it so amazing?
So the detail gives them options, multiple ways to re-enter the conversation.
Yes, it makes your contribution much more porous, maybe, more inviting. Gives them several potential entry points to keep the dialogue moving forward smoothly. You're actively providing fuel and suggesting possible directions for the conversation to take.
Okay, that's super clear. Better questions, fuller answers, those are about the what you say. What's the third technique the source brings up? This one seemed more about the how you sound, the feel of it.
Ah, right. That would be using filler phrases. Now, filler, it can sound a bit negative, right? Makes you think of just awkward ums and as when you can't find the word.
Yeah, like you're stalling.
But the source material presents a really different take on certain kinds of fillers. It argues they're not necessarily just hesitation markers.
What are they then?
They're presented more as tools, specific words or short phrases that native English speakers use constantly, all the time.
Mm.
And the argument is they actually make speech sound more natural, less abrupt or robotic.
Mm.
And yeah, sometimes they do buy you that split second to gather your thoughts, but they do it without creating that awkward dead air. The source suggests that consciously incorporating some of these can actually help you sound more fluent, more like a native speaker.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are some examples of these like functional filler phrases from the source?
Well, they list quite a few common ones. For instance, instead of a very crisp, maybe slightly formal yes, you might use softer, more common versions like yeah or yep.
Right. Much more common in casual chat.
Or you might add emphasis like
Yeah.
definitely or absolutely.
Yeah, and yep, feel more relaxed. Definitely shows strong agreement. They add a bit of flavor.
They do. They add subtle nuances of tone or certainty. Similarly, instead of a hard no, which can sometimes sound a bit blunt or dismissive,
Yeah, no, can shut things down fast.
it can. The source suggests alternatives like not really, which is much softer. Or, even better, adding an explanation or a positive spin like, not really, but I'd love to try it sometime.
Ooh, I like that one. Not really, but I'd love to try it sometime. That's great. It answers no, but keeps the door open on the topic, shows you're still engaged with the idea, doesn't just kill that conversation thread.
Exactly. It signals openness, maybe future interest. It's constructive.
Yeah.
Another big one the source mentions is for when you genuinely don't know the answer to something.
Instead of just, I don't know, which can feel a bit abrupt.
Yeah, or maybe even sound a bit unhelpful depending on the context. So instead, you can use phrases that sound much more natural, more conversational. Like, that's a good question.
Okay, I use that sometimes. Buys a second.
It does. And saying, that's a good question, validates their question, maybe even subtly compliments them for asking something thoughtful. And then you can add, I haven't really thought about it much. Or, I'd have to look that up.
Yeah. That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about it. That feels so much smoother than just, oh no. It's honest, but it doesn't sound like you're just dismissing the question. It sounds like maybe it's complex or just new to you.
Exactly. It manages the situation gracefully. The source also lists other common ones, like starting a sentence with well, or actually, or,
Like, well, I was thinking we could go tomorrow instead. Or, actually, I read somewhere that, or it's kind of like, when you first try something new.
yes. Well, often softens what comes next or signals a slight shift. Actually can be used to gently correct something or offer a slightly different perspective. Is often used to check for shared understanding or make something feel more relatable. It can be used to clarify or rephrase something you just said.
And starting with so, like, so what are we doing next?
Yeah, so often acts as a connector, indicating you're about to summarize or draw a conclusion or shift focus based on what was just discussed.
These little words and phrases, as the source points out, they're like the eel in the conversational ender.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They help everything run more smoothly without those jarring stops and starts. They give your brain those crucial milliseconds to catch up or plan the next bit while still signaling to the other persons that you're engaged in processing.
And they make you sound less like you're reading from a script and more like you're actually thinking and talking spontaneously.
Which is exactly the goal for natural conversation. The source suggests deliberately practicing using just one or two of these in a conversation can really make a difference in how natural you sound and feel.
Okay, good tip. So we've got better questions, fuller answers, using natural filler phrases. What's the fourth key linguistic technique from the source? This one's about keeping the flow going when maybe one topic is naturally winding down.
Right. This addresses that moment where, okay, we've kind of talked this topic out, or maybe something just reminded you of something else entirely. You need ways to pivot, to change the subject, but smoothly, without it feeling super abrupt or awkward, like you just pulled a conversational handbrake turn.
Yeah. Okay, are there specific phrases for this too, like the fillers? Transition signals.
Yes, exactly. The source material highlights several really useful transition phrases. One classic is, "That reminds me."
Ah, yeah. I use that.
It's great because it creates a bridge from whatever you were just talking about to the new thing you want to bring up. And the connection can be pretty logical, or sometimes, honestly, a bit tenuous is okay too.
Like the example they might have given, we were just talking about that great Italian restaurant. Oh, that reminds me. Have you ever actually been to Italy? The link is Italian.
Exactly. Or it could be loser. We were discussing the challenges of working from home. That reminds me, did you see that funny video about the cat interrupting the Zoom call? The link might just be working from home triggering Zoom call.
Hmm.
You're using the last topic as a springboard.
Okay, that reminds me. What's another useful one?
A slightly more direct one is speaking of that. Or even more specifically, speaking of whatever the previous topic was.
Oh, okay. Like speaking of movies or speaking of the weather.
Precisely. This explicitly links your new comment or question to something that was literally just mentioned. So if someone was just talking about their stressful week at work, you could say, "Wow, sounds tough. Speaking of work, did you hear about the new project starting next month?"
Very clear connection. It signals you're making a logical shift based directly on what they just said.
Exactly. Speaking of travel, speaking of cooking, speaking of weekend plans, it tells the listener, okay, we're still in the same rough area, but I'm skewing it slightly this way now.
Got it. Is there a more casual way, maybe, if the topic isn't directly related at all?
Yes, absolutely. The source points to the very common phrase, "Oh, by the
Oh,
way."
yeah, by the way.
This one's often used to introduce something that might be quite disconnected from the current flow. It's something you just remembered or something you wanted to ask or share that doesn't really fit the current topic.
Like maybe you're talking about gardening, and suddenly you say, oh, by the way, did you remember to call Sarah back?
Exactly. Or, we were chatting about our favorite books. Oh, by the way, did you see that news article about the local library funding? It's a very common, low-pressure way to just insert a new piece of information or shift to a new subject. The by the way, basically signals, okay, slight tangent coming up, and people generally accept it easily.
Okay, so these transition phrases, that reminds me, speaking of that, oh, by the way, they're like linguistic signposts. They signal you're changing lanes or taking an exit, making the journey smoother for everyone in the car.
Beautifully put. They are social cues embedded right in the language. They help the conversation feel less like a list of disconnected bullet points and more like a continuous evolving stream.
Okay, wow. So we've covered these core linguistic strategies, asking those open questions, giving those fuller answers with detail or question back, sprinkling in those natural filler phrases, and using transition phrases to change topics smoothly. That feels like a really powerful set of actual tools you can consciously use.
They really are. Very practical.
Yeah.
But, and this is a really crucial point the source material makes, these linguistic techniques, they're only part of the story.
Oh. What else is there?
Keeping conversations alive, making them feel natural, especially in English-speaking contexts.
Yeah.
It's also deeply tied to understanding some of the cultural stuff that goes along with it.
Ah, okay. So not just the words, but the unwritten rules, the social norms.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
It's about more than just grammar and vocab. It's about understanding how people generally interact in these cultures, what's expected, what helps things feel comfortable.
Right, because different cultures definitely have different conversational styles.
Hugely different sometimes. And the first major cultural element the source highlights for many English-speaking countries is the massive importance of small talk.
Small talk, love it or hate it.
Right. But the source describes it as a huge part of daily interactions. You really can't avoid it.
So why? Why is it so common and considered so important in these cultures?
Well, the source explains its main job is basically to help people feel comfortable with each other, to build a little bit of rapport, even if it's just for a minute or two.
Like a social icebreaker.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a low-stakes, easy way to connect before you maybe get into deeper things, or sometimes instead of getting into deeper things. It just keeps the conversational channels open, keeps things flowing, even in really short interactions. Think about waiting for the elevator, or queuing for coffee, or the first few minutes of a meeting.
Yeah, it fills those potentially awkward gaps.
It does. And it's everywhere. At work, in shops, waiting in line, neighbors chatting over the fence, social events. It's constant.
Okay, so what kind of topics are typically safe bets for small talk? The source mentions examples for places like the US or UK.
Yeah, it focuses on neutral, universally accessible topics. Things that most people can comment on without needing special knowledge or revealing anything too personal. And crucially, things that are unlikely to cause disagreement.
Like,
The weather is the absolute classic,
can't go wrong with the weather.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Also things like TV shows or movies that are popular right now. Plans for the upcoming weekend? Got anything nice planned?
Hmm.
Sometimes sports, if you're in a context where that seems relevant and shared.
So questions like, wow, it's been so hot lately, hasn't it?
Exactly. Or, did you happen to catch the latest episode of that popular show? Doing anything fun this weekend? Or even just busy day today? These are easy prompts. People give a short answer, yeah, crazy weather, or a slightly longer one, actually, yeah, we're heading to the beach this weekend, depending on how much they want to engage.
They're like little conversational lubricants, just easing the social gears.
Perfectly said.
Mm.
Warming up the interaction. However, and this is really important, the source provides a vital warning here. There are topics that are generally considered off-limits for casual small talk, especially if you want to keep things light, friendly, and flowing.
Ah, the danger zones. What are they?
The big three usually cited are money,
Okay.
religion,
Right.
and politics.
Money, religion, politics. Got it. Why are those generally considered no-go areas for small talk?
Because they are often deeply personal, tied to very strong core beliefs and values, and, let's face it, they can be incredibly divisive or controversial.
Yeah, things can get heated fast.
Exactly. Bringing them up in a casual chat with someone you don't know well, or maybe even someone you do know but in the wrong setting, dramatically increases the risk of hitting an awkward silence, making someone uncomfortable, or even sparking an argument, which completely defeats the purpose of small talk, right?
Yeah.
Small talk is meant to build easy rapport, find common ground.
Not start a debate club.
Precisely. You're just unlikely to have the same views or values on those heavy topics with every single person you bump into for a quick chat. Best to steer clear in those initial light interactions.
That is super practical cultural advice. Keep small talk light, keep it neutral if you want the conversation to flow easily and avoid unexpected bumps.
Absolutely. Small talk is about finding that simple, shared human ground, not digging into complex or potentially sensitive differences.
Okay, so small talk is pillar number 1 for the cultural side. What's the next element the source identifies that really helps keep conversations engaging in these contexts?
Storytelling.
Ah, okay. Telling stories.
Yeah. The material makes the point that in many Western cultures, people genuinely enjoy both sharing and listening to personal experiences, little anecdotes, brief stories about things that happened to them. Being able to weave a short, reasonably engaging story into the conversation. It's a really powerful way to hold someone's interest and, importantly, encourage them to share something back.
This sounds a bit like a more advanced version of the giving fuller answers technique we talked about earlier, using detail.
It absolutely is. It takes that idea of adding detail and structures it into a mini-narrative.
Yeah.
A beginning, maybe a little middle, maybe a little end or a point. The source actually revisits the "how was your weekend" example to show this really well.
Okay, instead of just, it was good, or even the fuller, I went hiking. Have you been hiking recently? What's the storytelling version?
Right? The storytelling version they suggest goes something like this. Oh, it was great, actually. I went hiking with some friends on Saturday up in the hills, and we found this amazing hidden waterfall. It wasn't even on the map. That was pretty cool.
Okay, nice start. Specific.
Then on Sunday, I decided to try making homemade pizza for the first time.
Uh-oh.
But I totally burned it. Ha ha, complete disaster. Have you ever had a cooking disaster like that?
Uh-huh. Okay, that is much richer, isn't it? Let's break that down like the source does. Why is that little paragraph such effective conversational storytelling?
Well, the source points out a few key things. First, like you said, it's personal and specific. It's not generic. It's your weekend with specific details. Hiking, friends, Saturday, hills, hidden waterfall Sunday, homemade pizza, burning it. Those details make it vivid, easy for the listener to picture. They feel like they were almost there.
Yeah, you can see the waterfall, smell the burned pizza. It also has a nice little shape to it, doesn't it? Like a mini story arc. There's the high point, finding the cool waterfall, and then there's the relatable, slightly funny low point, the pizza fail.
Exactly. And the source emphasizes that sharing a small failure, something a bit vulnerable or humorous like burning the pizza, actually makes you seem more human, more approachable.
Right. Not like you have this perfect, amazing life all the time.
Precisely. It encourages the other person to maybe share one of their own imperfections or funny screw-ups. It builds connection on a more genuine level than just listing accomplishments. And then, crucially, just like the fuller answer technique, What does it end with?
It ends with an open-ended question back to them. Have you ever had a cooking disaster like that?
Bingo! It explicitly invites them to share a similar story, setting up that lovely reciprocal storytelling dynamic. They can now jump in with their own kitchen catastrophe story.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you about the time I set the smoke alarm off.
Exactly. Or they might ask more about the waterfall. Wow, a hidden waterfall. Where was that? Or maybe just reminds them of their own weekend story. The point is, your story provided multiple hooks, multiple ways for them to respond and keep the conversation going.
It makes the whole interaction feel much more natural and fun, like the source says. You're not just swapping data points, you're sharing little slices of life. That feels much more like building rapport.
It really does. It makes the interaction more memorable and enjoyable for both people.
Okay, so we've got the cultural importance of small talk for easing in, and the power of storytelling for deeper engagement and connection. What's the third critical cultural element the source material brings up for keeping conversations alive?
Active listening.
Ah, yes, listening. Seems obvious, but maybe not so simple.
Well, the source points out something interesting. In many English-speaking cultures, it's often not enough to just sit there and listen quietly, even if you are paying attention intently. You generally need to show the speaker that you're engaged, that you're following along.
Right. This is fascinating because, like you alluded to earlier, in some other cultures, listening very quietly, without interrupting at all, is seen as the most respectful way to pay attention.
It absolutely is. And the source doesn't say that's wrong. It just highlights a potential difference in expectation in these specific English-speaking contexts. The point is, if you're completely silent as a listener, and maybe your body language is quite still too, the speaker might misinterpret that. They might worry you're bored or confused or zoning out.
Okay, so you need to provide some kind of feedback signal. How do people typically do that according to the source? What are the signs of active listening?
The source lists a whole bunch of common ways.
Yeah.
A big one is using small verbal responses, little interjections while the other person is talking.
Like what?
Things like, "Ooh, really? No way. Oh, wow, that's interesting. That was amazing. Gotcha."
Yeah.
Right? Or, "I see what you mean."
Okay, so these aren't meant to interrupt the person's flow, necessarily. More like little verbal nods.
Exactly. They're like brief reactions or acknowledgments that you sprinkle in. "Oh, really?" Shows surprise, maybe encourages them to elaborate. "No way." Expresses stronger reaction. Often positive disbelief or excitement. "That sounds amazing." Shows enthusiasm. Or, "Right?" Or just basic tracking signals. "Yep, I'm following you." "I see what you mean." Confirms you're understanding their point.
They're sending little signals back to the speaker saying, keep going, I'm with you, I'm hearing this.
Precisely. They provide that immediate feedback that their message is landing, that it's being received and processed in some way. And importantly, it's not just verbal. The source really emphasizes the vital role of nonverbal cues too. Body language.
Okay, like what kind of body language?
Things like nodding your head as they speak. Maintaining good, comfortable eye contact. Not staring intensely, but looking at them regularly. And sometimes slightly leaning your body forward can also signal interest and attentiveness.
Right. Nodding shows agreement or just that you're understanding. Eye contact shows focus. Leaning in shows you're keen to hear more.
These physical signals work together with those little verbal cues. Wow. To create this whole picture of an engaged, active listener. The source actually encourages people to consciously practice using a few of these short reactions, maybe just throwing in an "oh, wow," or "that's interesting" when listening, and also to just pay a bit more attention to their posture and nodding during conversations.
It feels a bit weird to practice nodding, maybe, but I guess it makes it more automatic over time.
That's the idea. The more you consciously do it, the more natural it becomes. It becomes part of your conversational habit.
So active listening in this context is really about this combination of small verbal acknowledgments and positive body language to show the speaker, hey, I'm present, I'm engaged, I'm following you. It's a collaborative act, even when you're the listener.
It truly is. It makes the speaker feel heard, validated, and encouraged. And when the speaker feels encouraged, what do? They're more likely to keep talking, keep sharing, which naturally keeps the conversation flowing.
Wow. Okay, we have really covered a lot of ground here. We looked at the pitfalls, those yes-no questions, the one-word answers. Then we dove into the linguistic tools, asking open what a why questions, giving those fuller answers with detail or question back, using those natural filler phrases like well or, and using transition phrases like speaking of that for smooth topic changes.
Yep, the core mechanics.
And then we layered on top these really crucial cultural insights, understanding the role and rules of small talk, harnessing the power of storytelling, and the importance of actively showing you're listening through verbal cues and body language. That really feels like a comprehensive toolkit for building conversational confidence.
It really does cover the bases, doesn't it? The mechanics, the content strategies, and that vital social context. The source material does a nice job weaving them together.
And it doesn't just dump the info on you. The material also suggests like a practical next step, right? A little challenge to actually try this stuff out.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It really encourages you to put these ideas into practice straight away, which is great advice. The suggestion is pretty simple. Pick a topic you feel comfortable talking about. Then try consciously formulating a few open-ended questions about it, using what, how, or why.
Okay.
Then practice giving a fuller answer to one of those imaginary questions, making sure you deliberately add an extra detail and maybe a follow-up question back. And it also suggests trying to just sprinkle in one or two of those filler phrases like well or naturally into your practice sentences.
So it breaks it down into manageable steps. Don't try to do everything at once. Just focus on one small technique. Practice it a bit.
Exactly. Conscious practice in a low-pressure way, even just talking to yourself or a friend, is absolutely key to making these skills feel less deliberate and more automatic over time.
And that leads perfectly into what felt like the overarching motivational message that the source material really ends on, which is just so freeing, I thought. It's simply, don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yes. This is probably the single most important takeaway from the whole thing. Learning to navigate conversations well, especially in a language you're still learning, it inevitably involves trial and error.
For sure.
There are going to be times when you stumble over a word or your transition feels a bit clunky or you ask a question that doesn't quite land right. That is completely normal. It's part of the process.
Doesn't mean you failed.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The source really stresses that just showing up, being consistent, and trying is way more important than achieving some impossible standard of perfection. Every single conversation is just another chance to practice, to learn a little bit more, to get slightly smoother.
And the ultimate goal isn't about sounding like a perfectly programmed robot speaking flawless English anyway,
Yeah.
as the source so powerfully puts it. English is about connection, not perfection.
Oh, I love that line. It just encapsulates the whole philosophy beautifully, doesn't it? The real purpose of learning all these techniques, it isn't just to speak without pauses or grammatical errors. It's to connect with another human being, to share something, to understand something, to build a bit of rapport, maybe even a relationship. When you focus on connection as the goal, then the occasional linguistic wobble, it just doesn't feel as catastrophic.
It takes the pressure off. It encourages you to actually prioritize engaging with the person in front of you, rather than being totally paralyzed by the fear of saying something wrong.
Exactly. That perspective is truly liberating. It reframes the whole challenge. It's not about passing some abstract language test. It's about the very human act of connecting with someone else.
And presumably when your main focus is on connecting, you're naturally more likely to do the things that help conversations flow anyway, right? You'll listen more actively because you care what they're saying. You'll ask questions that show genuine interest. You'll be more willing to share a bit of yourself.
Absolutely. The focus on connection naturally fuels many of the positive conversational behaviors we've been talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so thinking about all these techniques and the cultural stuff, the open questions, the fuller answers, the fillers, the transitions, the small talk do's and don'ts, the storytelling, the active listening, it really makes you think about how you might need to adapt them slightly, depending on the specific situation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The source gives us these great general principles, fantastic starting points, but when you actually go out and use them, you probably need to tweak them a bit.
That's a really insightful point to bring up. That's the next level of mastery, isn't it? How do these techniques need to flex based on who you're talking to?
Right.
Because the way you make small talk exactly the same when you're chatting with your CEO versus catching up with an old friend at a barbecue, probably not.
No way. More formal, maybe safer topics with the CEO.
Exactly. Are the specific active listening cues you use, the and wows, the same in a super formal board meeting presentation Q&A as they are in a relaxed chat over coffee? Maybe slightly different levels of enthusiasm or types of interjection.
And the setting itself must play a role too, right?
Fair.
Does casually dropping an "oh, by the way" to completely change the topic feel as appropriate in a structured team meeting trying to solve a problem compared to just hanging out afterward?
Probably not. The context, the environment, the relationship you have with the person, the actual purpose of that specific conversation, It all subtly influences how you apply these fundamental principles effectively.
So it's not just learning the rules, but learning when and how to bend them slightly, or which tool is best for which specific job.
Exactly. Reflecting on those nuances, observing how others navigate different situations, that helps you move beyond just knowing the techniques to really mastering the art of using them effectively in all the different contexts you find yourself in. It's an ongoing journey of observation, practice, and adjustment.
Something for all of us listening to keep in mind as we try out these techniques. It's not just about learning the dance steps. It's about learning how to actually dance with different partners in different ballrooms.
Wonderfully put, indeed.
Well, this has been incredibly practical, really insightful, a proper deep dive into something so fundamental, just keeping conversations alive and flowing, especially when you're doing it in English. Thank you so much for unpacking all these fantastic strategies from that source material.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure. It's great to explore such actionable insights, things that can genuinely make a difference to someone's confidence and their ability to connect with others.
So for everyone listening, take that challenge. Pick just one technique we talked about today. Maybe you'll focus on asking more what or how questions in your next chat, or maybe you'll consciously practice adding one extra detail in a question back when you answer someone. Just try one thing.
Small steps.
Small steps. And always, always hold on to that core message, that freeing idea. English is about connection, not perfection.
Practice, be patient with yourself, and really focus on that human connection. That's the real path to fluency and feeling confident.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep talking, keep practicing, and enjoy making those connections in English.